Bear cub got stuck in the wall and crying. What this human baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning mist clung to the old stone walls like a secret waiting to be told. In the small village of Pine Ridge, 23-year-old Maya Chen stepped out of her cottage, cradling her 8-month-old daughter, Aria, in her arms. The baby's dark eyes sparkled with curiosity as she reached for the dewdrops on the morning glory vines that crawled up their wooden porch. Maya had moved to this remote village 6 months ago, seeking peace after her husband's sudden death in a car accident. The cottage sat at the very edge of the forest, where civilization met the wild. Her neighbors, the Hendersons, lived a quarter-mile down the dirt road, and beyond that, there was nothing but trees for miles. "Look at those pretty flowers, sweet girl," Maya whispered to Aria, who giggled and clapped her tiny hands together. The sound of her daughter's laughter was the only thing that could still bring a genuine smile to Maya's face. As they stood on the porch, a strange sound drifted through the morning air. It was faint at first, almost like the wind through the branches, but then it came again, clearer this time. A crying sound, high-pitched and desperate. Maya frowned, adjusting Aria in her arms. "Did you hear that, baby?" she murmured, scanning the tree line. The forest was always full of sounds, birds chirping, squirrels chattering, branches creaking. But this was different. This sounded almost human, yet not quite. The crying came again, louder now, and Maya felt her heart skip. It was coming from somewhere near the old stone wall that bordered her property. The wall had been there for decades, built by some long-gone farmer to mark his land. Time had weathered it, loosening the mortar between the stones, creating gaps and holes that small animals sometimes used as shelter. Maya walked toward the sound, her bare feet silent on the dew-wet grass. Aria babbled softly, her small fingers tangled in her mother's long black hair. The crying grew more desperate, more pained, and Maya quickened her pace. When she reached the wall, she stopped dead in her tracks. There, wedged between two large stones about 3 feet from the ground, was a small brown paw. The paw moved frantically, claws scraping against the stone as something on the other side of the wall struggled to free itself. "Oh my God," Maya breathed, her hand instinctively tightening around Aria. The baby seemed to sense the tension and grew quiet, her dark eyes fixed on the trapped paw. The crying sound came again, and now Maya could tell it was coming from whatever was stuck in the wall. She approached cautiously, her heart pounding. As she got closer, she could hear the animal's labored breathing, could see how the paw trembled with exhaustion. "Hello?" she called softly, feeling foolish for talking to a trapped animal. "Are you okay in there?" The struggling stopped for a moment, and Maya heard what sounded like sniffling. Then the paw moved again, more gently this time, as if the animal was trying to get her attention rather than escape. Maya looked around nervously. If this was a wild animal, where was its mother? The forest seemed unusually quiet, as if every creature was holding its breath. Even the birds had stopped singing. She knelt down carefully, still holding Aria, and peered through a gap in the stones. What she saw made her gasp. A pair of small dark eyes stared back at her, wet with tears that looked startlingly human. It was a bear cub, probably only a few months old, with soft brown fur and a black nose that twitched as it sniffled. "Oh, you poor little thing," Maya whispered, her heart melting. The cub's eyes followed her movement, and it made a soft whimpering sound that broke her heart. Aria suddenly cooed and reached toward the wall with her chubby hands. The baby's eyes were fixed on the trapped cub with an intensity that surprised Maya. It was as if Arya understood exactly what was happening. The cub heard Arya's voice and immediately stopped crying. Its ears perked up, and it made a different sound now, almost like a questioning chirp. Arya giggled in response, kicking her legs excitedly in her mother's arms. Maya stared in amazement as her daughter and the bear cub seemed to communicate in their own language of sounds and gestures. Arya babbled something that sounded like words, and the cub responded with soft huffing noises. "This is incredible," Maya murmured, but her wonder was quickly replaced by concern. "But sweetie, we need to help this little guy." She examined the wall more closely. The cub's paw was wedged tight between two stones, and from what she could see, the animal had been trying to reach something on her side of the wall when it got stuck. There were scratch marks on the stones, and small bits of fur caught on the rough edges. Maya pulled out her phone to call for help, but the screen showed no signal. She was too far from town, and the mountains blocked most cell towers. The nearest neighbor was the Hendersons, but they were elderly and might not be able to help with a wild animal situation. As she pondered what to do, Arya began to fuss, reaching more insistently toward the wall. The baby's movements became more urgent, and she started making soft crying sounds that seemed to mirror the cub's earlier distress. "What is it, baby?" Maya asked, but Arya just reached harder toward the stones. Then something extraordinary happened. The cub, hearing Arya's distressed sounds, began to make comforting noises back to her, soft, rumbling sounds like a mother might make to calm a crying child. Arya immediately quieted, her eyes wide with wonder. Maya felt tears prick her own eyes. Even trapped and in pain, this baby bear was trying to comfort her daughter. The maternal instinct was so strong, so pure, that it transcended species. "We have to help him," she said to Arya, who nodded as if she understood every word. "But how?" The morning sun climbed higher, and Maya knew that wherever the cub's mother was, she would be looking for her baby soon. The thought of a full-grown mama bear finding Maya and Arya near her trapped cub sent chills down her spine. But as she looked at the small paw still moving weakly between the stones and saw the trust in those dark eyes peering through the gap, Maya knew she couldn't just walk away. This wasn't just any wild animal. This was a baby, just like Arya, and it needed help. The question was, how could she free the cub without putting herself and her daughter in danger? And what would happen when the mother bear arrived? Maya circled the wall slowly, examining it from every angle while Arya continued making soft sounds to the trapped cub. The wall stretched for about 50 feet along her property line, built from large field stones that had been fitted together without much mortar. Years of weather had eroded the spaces between the rocks, creating natural gaps and crevices. She found where the cub had originally tried to climb through. On the forest side of the wall, there were tiny scratch marks in the earth and disturbed leaves. The gap the cub had attempted to squeeze through was barely 6 inches wide at its narrowest point, but it opened up slightly on Maya's side where 2 stones had shifted over time. "He was trying to get to something over here," Maya murmured, looking around her yard. That's when she noticed them scattered near the base of the wall, almost hidden in the tall grass. Wild blackberries. They must have fallen from the heavy vines that grew along the top of the stone barrier. The cub had smelled the sweet berries and tried to reach them. In his eagerness, he'd pushed too far into the gap and gotten his shoulder and front paw stuck. The more he'd struggled, the tighter he'd become wedged. Arya suddenly let out a sharp cry and pointed toward the forest. Maya followed her daughter's gaze and felt her blood run cold. There, about 30 yards into the trees, a massive black shape was moving between the trunks. The mother bear was searching for her cub, and she was getting closer. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She had maybe 5 minutes before the mother bear reached the wall. If the sow found Maya and Arya near her trapped baby, maternal instincts would kick in with deadly force. "We have to work fast, sweetheart," Maya whispered to Arya, who seemed to understand the urgency. The baby reached toward the wall again, making urgent little sounds. Maya knelt beside the trapped cub and spoke softly through the gap. "Hey there, little one. I'm going to try to help you, but you have to stay very still for me, okay?" The cub's dark eyes met hers, and incredibly he stopped struggling. It was as if he understood that she was trying to help. Arya babbled something that sounded encouraging, and the cub made a soft chirping response. Maya examined the stones more carefully. The cub's shoulder was wedged tight, but she could see that if she could shift the upper stone just a few inches, it might create enough space for him to back out. The problem was, the stone probably weighed close to 200 pounds. She looked around desperately for something to use as leverage. Her eyes fell on an old iron fence post that lay rusted near her garden shed. It wasn't ideal, but it might work as a pry bar if she could find the right fulcrum point. As she hurried to get the fence post, Arya started crying louder, her little face turning red with distress. The trapped cub immediately began making those same comforting rumbling sounds, trying to soothe the baby even in his own desperate situation. Maya grabbed the fence post and ran back to the wall. The mother bear was definitely closer now. She could hear branches snapping under heavy paws. Time was running out. She wedged the iron post under the loose stone and used a smaller rock as a fulcrum. "Please, work," she muttered, putting all her weight behind the makeshift lever. The stone shifted slightly, but not enough. The cub whimpered as the movement pinched his shoulder. Maya's arms burned with effort, and sweat dripped down her face despite the cool morning air. That's when something remarkable happened. Arya, still in Maya's left arm, reached out and placed her tiny hand on the fence post right next to her mother's grip. The baby's face was scrunched with concentration, as if she was actually trying to help push. The moment Arya's hand touched the metal, the trapped cub made an extraordinary sound. Not a cry of pain or fear, but something that sounded almost like singing. A melodic, haunting call that seemed to echo through the forest. And the forest answered back. From deep in the woods came a responding call, but it wasn't from the mother bear. This sound was different, higher pitched, almost musical. Then another voice joined in, and another, until it sounded like a chorus of animals singing together. Maya stared in shock as the sounds grew closer. Through the trees, she could see movement, but not just the mother bear. There were other shapes, other animals, all moving toward the wall. "What's happening?" she whispered. But Arya just smiled and made more encouraging sounds to the trapped cub. The cub continued his strange singing, and now Maya could feel vibrations through the fence post. Not from her own efforts, but from something else entirely. The metal was humming with a frequency she could feel in her bones. She pressed harder on the lever, and this time the stone moved several inches. The cub immediately began trying to back out of the gap, but he was still stuck. Maya repositioned the fence post and tried again. The animal chorus was getting louder, and now she could see them emerging from the tree line. A family of raccoons, several deer, even a red fox, all moving in the same direction. They weren't running in fear or aggression. They were walking calmly, deliberately, as if they had some purpose. And leading them all was the mother bear. Maya's breath caught in her throat. The massive sow was easily 400 pounds, her dark fur rippling over powerful muscles. But she wasn't charging or showing any signs of aggression. Instead, she was walking steadily toward the wall, her small dark eyes fixed on the spot where her cub was trapped. Behind her, The other animals followed in an almost ceremonial procession. Maya had never seen anything like it. Wild animals didn't behave this way. They didn't gather together, didn't move with such purpose and coordination. The mother bear reached the wall and stopped about 10 feet away. She looked directly at Maya, and for a moment neither human nor bear moved. Maya felt as if she was being evaluated, judged, measured by those intelligent dark eyes. Then the bear did something that nearly made Maya drop the fence post in shock. She sat down, like a trained dog waiting for a command. The other animals arranged themselves in a semicircle around her, all facing the wall where the cub was trapped, and they began to make sounds. Not random animal noises, but coordinated tones that seemed to match the frequency of the cub's singing. The forest filled with a harmony that raised goosebumps on Maya's arms. Arya laughed with delight and clapped her hands, adding her own babbling voice to the strange chorus. The trapped cub's singing grew stronger, more urgent, and Maya felt the vibrations through the fence post increase. She pressed down with all her strength, and this time the stone moved easily, as if it weighed nothing at all. The gap widened enough for the cub to pull his shoulder free, but instead of immediately backing out, he turned in the space and poked his head through to Maya's side of the wall. The little bear looked up at Maya and Arya with what could only be described as gratitude in his dark eyes. He made a soft sound, almost like thank you, and gently touched his nose to Arya's outstretched hand. The baby giggled and patted the cub's furry head. "Bubba," she said clearly, her first real word. Maya's eyes filled with tears. "Bear," she whispered. "She said bear." The cub nuzzled Arya's palm once more, then carefully backed out of the gap and disappeared to the other side of the wall. Within seconds, Maya could hear the reunion, the mother bear making deep, loving sounds as she checked her baby for injuries. But the other animals didn't leave. They remained in their semicircle, still making those harmonic sounds. And now Maya realized they weren't just singing for the cub. They were singing for her and Arya too. The mother bear appeared at the end of the wall, her cub walking beside her on obviously sore but functional legs. The sow approached Maya slowly, her massive head lowered in what seemed like a gesture of respect. Maya stood frozen, still holding Arya, as the enormous bear came within arm's reach. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but something deeper, something that connected to the extraordinary events she'd just witnessed, told her to stay still. The mother bear extended her great head toward Arya, who reached out fearlessly to touch the animal's snout. For a moment, baby and bear regarded each other with mutual fascination. Then the mother bear did something that would haunt Maya's dreams for the rest of her life. She spoke, not in words, but in a voice that Maya heard not with her ears, but directly in her mind. A warm, maternal voice that said, "Thank you for saving my child. Your kindness will not be forgotten." Maya gasped, stumbling backward, sure she was losing her mind. But Arya just smiled and patted the bear's nose again, as if hearing voices in her head was the most natural thing in the world. The mother bear stepped back and made a gesture with her head toward the other animals. One by one, they approached the wall. The raccoons chittered what sounded like gratitude. The deer stepped forward and bowed their heads. Even the fox came close enough to touch its nose to the stone where the cub had been trapped. And Maya heard them all. Not words, but emotions, thoughts, feelings of thanks and recognition flowing directly into her consciousness. It was overwhelming and beautiful, and terrifying all at once. When the last animal had paid its respects, the mother bear looked at Maya one more time. This time, the voice in her head was different, more urgent. "Danger comes to the forest. Your daughter is special, marked by the old magic. Keep her safe. Keep her close. When the time comes, we will remember what you did today." Before Maya could even process what that meant, the bear turned and walked back into the forest. Her cub followed, looking back once to chirp a goodbye to Arya. The other animals dispersed just as mysteriously as they had gathered, melting back into the trees until the forest looked perfectly normal again. Maya stood in her yard, holding her babbling daughter, wondering if she'd just experienced the most extraordinary morning of her life, or if she was having some kind of breakdown. The fence post lay forgotten at her feet, and the stone wall looked exactly as it had before, except for the slightly enlarged gap where the cub had been trapped. But when she looked at that gap, she noticed something that made her heart skip. Scratched into the stone, so fresh they could only have been made in the last few minutes, were symbols. Not random scratches, but deliberate markings that looked almost like primitive writing. And somehow, impossibly, Maya could read them. "The covenant is made," the symbols said. "Blood of the earth, child of two worlds, the forest remembers." Arya cooed and pointed at the markings, then looked up at her mother with eyes that seemed far too wise for an 8-month-old baby. Maya carried her daughter back to the cottage, her mind reeling with questions. What had just happened? What did the bear mean about danger coming to the forest? And what was this old magic that supposedly marked Arya? As she reached her front door, Maya noticed something else that made her stop dead in her tracks. Her cell phone, which had shown no signal just an hour ago, was now ringing. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but somehow she knew she had to answer it. "Hello?" she said cautiously. "Maya Chen?" The voice was male, official sounding. "This is Agent David Torres with the Department of Natural Resources. We need to talk." Maya's hand trembled as she held the phone. "I'm sorry, who is this?" "Agent Torres. I'm about 20 minutes out from your location. We've been monitoring some unusual electromagnetic readings from your area, and we need to discuss what happened this morning." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. How could they possibly know what had happened? She looked down at Arya, who was staring at the phone with that same unnaturally wise expression. "I don't understand," Maya said carefully. "What kind of readings?" "The kind that register when certain individuals make contact with what we call enhanced wildlife. Ms. Chen, you and your daughter may be in danger. I need you to stay exactly where you are until I arrive." The line went dead. Maya stared at the phone, her mind racing. Enhanced wildlife? Electromagnetic readings? None of this made sense, but after what she'd just experienced, she was beginning to realize that her understanding of the world was woefully incomplete. She carried Arya inside and locked the door, though she wasn't sure what good it would do against talking bears and government agents with mysterious knowledge. The cottage suddenly felt too small, too isolated. Maya found herself constantly looking out the windows, watching for any sign of movement in the forest. Arya seemed restless too, fussing in ways she never had before. The baby kept pointing toward the wall where they'd rescued the cub, babbling in what sounded almost like words, but in no language Maya recognized. "What's happening to us, sweetheart?" Maya whispered, bouncing Arya gently. "What's happening to you?" As if in response to her question, Arya suddenly went completely still, her dark eyes fixed on something behind Maya, and the baby's expression became one of intense concentration. Maya turned around, expecting to see someone at the window, but there was nothing there. Then Arya spoke, in a voice that was definitely her own, but with words far beyond her developmental stage. "Mama, the forest is scared." Maya nearly dropped her daughter in shock. "Arya, did you just—" But the baby had returned to normal, babbling and reaching for Maya's hair as if nothing unusual had happened. Maya convinced herself she'd imagined it, that stress was making her hear things that weren't there. 20 minutes later, exactly as promised, a black SUV pulled into her driveway. Maya watched from behind her curtains as a tall man in a dark suit got out. He looked to be in his 40s, with graying hair and the kind of alert, watchful expression she associated with law enforcement. Agent Torres knocked on her door with the measured patience of someone who was used to people being reluctant to open up. "Miss Chen? I know this must be confusing, but I really do need to speak with you." Maya cracked the door open, keeping the chain latch engaged. "Show me some identification." He held up a badge and ID that looked official enough, though Maya had no idea what a real Department of Natural Resources badge was supposed to look like. "May I come in? What we need to discuss isn't really appropriate for the front porch." Against her better judgment, Maya let him in. Agent Torres was polite, but had an underlying tension that put her on edge. He glanced around the cottage with the trained eye of someone cataloging potential threats and escape routes. "Nice place," he said. But Maya could tell he was just making conversation while he assessed the situation. His eyes lingered on Arya, who was studying him with that same intense focus she'd shown the bear. "Agent Torres, what exactly is the Department of Natural Resources' interest in me and my daughter?" He sat down across from her, pulling out a small electronic device that looked like a cross between a cell phone and a Geiger counter. It was making soft clicking sounds that increased in frequency whenever he pointed it toward Arya. "Ms. Chen, are you familiar with the concept of genetic throwbacks, evolutionary reversions? I took some biology in college, but I'm not sure what that has to do with anything. Sometimes, very rarely, individuals are born with genetic markers that haven't been active in the human population for thousands of years. Markers that allowed our ancestors to communicate with and influence wildlife in ways that modern science is only beginning to understand." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "You're talking about my daughter." The readings we detected this morning were off the charts. Whatever happened here triggered a response from every large predator within a 50-mile radius. We have wolves moving toward this area from 3 different directions, a family of mountain lions descending from the peaks, and at least 2 other bear families abandoning their normal territories to head this way. "That's impossible," Maya breathed. But even as she said it, she remembered the strange procession of animals she'd witnessed. Agent Torres leaned forward, his expression grave. "Miss Chen, your daughter isn't just unusual. She's what we call a prime communicator. There haven't been more than a dozen confirmed cases in the last century, and most of them died young." "Died how?" Maya's voice was barely a whisper. "The ability comes with a price. Prime communicators act as a bridge between human consciousness and the collective awareness of wildlife. But that bridge works both ways. As they grow older, they become increasingly sensitive to the emotions and experiences of every animal within their influence range. Most can't handle the sensory overload." Maya pulled Arya closer to her chest, as if she could protect her daughter from the agent's words. "You're telling me my baby is going to die because she can talk to animals? Not if we can help it. That's why I'm here." Torres put away his device and met Maya's eyes directly. "There's a facility in Colorado where we study and train individuals with these abilities. We can teach your daughter how to control her gift, how to filter the input so it doesn't overwhelm her." "A facility?" Maya's voice turned sharp. "You mean you want to take her away from me? It's not about what we want, Miss Chen. It's about keeping her alive. And frankly, it's about keeping you and everyone else in this area safe, too." "What do you mean?" Torres stood up and walked to the window that faced the forest. "The animals gathering here aren't coming to pay their respects. They're coming because your daughter's abilities are growing stronger by the hour, and she's unconsciously calling to them. In about 6 hours, when the sun sets and nocturnal hunters become active, this area is going to become extremely dangerous for any human caught in the open. As if to emphasize his point, a deep howl echoed from the forest, followed by another and another. Maya had lived on the edge of wilderness for months without hearing a single wolf, but now it sounded like an entire pack was converging on her property. Arya began to cry, but her tears weren't normal baby crying. Each sob seemed to harmonize with the howls outside, creating an eerie musical pattern that made Maya's skin crawl. "She's responding to them," Torres said grimly, "and they're responding to her. Miss Chen, we need to leave, now." "No." Maya stood up, holding Arya protectively. "I'm not going anywhere with you. I don't know who you really are, or what you really want with my daughter." Torres sighed and pulled out his phone. He showed Maya the screen, which displayed what looked like a satellite map with dozens of moving red dots all converging on a single location. Her cottage. "Those are tagged predators from our monitoring program. Every single one of them is heading here. In 3 hours, this place will be surrounded by more dangerous wildlife than has gathered in one place since the last time we had a prime communicator activation." Maya stared at the screen in horror. The dots were moving steadily toward the center of the map, some from over 100 miles away. "What happened the last time?" Torres's expression darkened. "Yellowstone, 1987. A 12-year-old boy named Tommy Whitehorse. We didn't understand what was happening until it was too late. By the time we reached him, there were over 300 large predators in a 5-mile radius. Grizzlies, wolves, mountain lions, even animals that had never been seen together in the wild. What happened to the boy?" "He survived, but barely. The sensory overload put him in a coma for 6 months. When he woke up, he was different. The animals had left their mark on him. He could still communicate with them, but he'd lost most of his ability to relate to humans. He lives in our facility now, more comfortable with wolves than people." Maya felt tears building in her eyes. "I won't let that happen to Arya." "Then come with me. Our researchers have learned a lot since 1987. We have techniques now, ways to help prime communicators maintain their humanity while still accessing their abilities." Before Maya could respond, Arya suddenly went rigid in her arms. The baby's eyes rolled back, showing only whites, and she began to make a sound Maya had never heard before, a low, rhythmic humming that seemed to vibrate through the cottage walls. "She's having an episode," Torres said, pulling out a small medical kit. "This is what I was afraid of. Her abilities are manifesting too quickly." The humming grew louder, and Maya could hear responses from outside. Not just howls now, but roars, chirps, calls from dozens of different species, all harmonizing with Arya's strange song. "What's happening to her?" Maya cried. "She's accessing the collective consciousness. All those animals out there, she's connecting with all of them at once. For an adult with training, it's overwhelming. For a baby..." Arya's body began to convulse, her back arching as the humming reached a fever pitch. Maya tried to comfort her, but nothing she did seemed to reach her daughter. That's when the cottage began to shake. At first, Maya thought it was an earthquake, but then she realized the vibrations were rhythmic, matching Arya's humming. Through the windows, she could see trees swaying in perfect synchronization, as if the entire forest was moving to some unheard music. "We have to get her away from here," Torres shouted over the growing cacophony. "The longer she stays, the stronger the connection becomes. Eventually, she won't be able to break free of it." Maya looked at her convulsing daughter, then at the satellite display showing dozens of predators closing in on their location. Every instinct told her not to trust this stranger, but Arya was clearly in distress, and whatever was happening was beyond anything Maya could handle alone. "If I come with you," she said, raising her voice to be heard over the humming, "how do I know you won't just take her away from me permanently?" Torres reached into his jacket and pulled out a card. "This is Dr. Sarah Winters. She runs the program in Colorado. Call her, talk to her, but do it from the car, because we need to leave in the next 10 minutes or we're going to be trapped here." Maya looked at the card, then at Arya, who was now glowing with a faint luminescence that seemed to pulse in time with her humming. The baby's skin had taken on an almost translucent quality, and Maya could swear she could see patterns moving beneath the surface, like living tattoos made of light. The howling outside was getting closer, and now Maya could see shapes moving between the trees. Large shapes, too many to count, all converging on her cottage. "Okay," she said finally, "but I'm driving my own car, and if I don't like what I see at this facility, I'm taking my daughter and disappearing." Torres nodded. "Fair enough. But we need to move now. Pack light, just essentials. And whatever you do, don't let go of your daughter. Physical contact with you is the only thing keeping her tethered to her human consciousness right now." Maya quickly threw some clothes and baby supplies into a bag, while Torres kept watch at the windows. The agent was tense, constantly checking his device and muttering into a radio. "How long do we have?" Maya asked as she grabbed Arya's favorite stuffed animal. "The first wolves just broke the tree line," Torres replied grimly. "Maybe 5 minutes before they reach the house." As if summoned by his words, a massive gray wolf stepped out of the forest and into Maya's backyard. It was followed by another, then another, until at least a dozen wolves stood in a semicircle around the cottage. But they weren't acting aggressively. Instead, they sat down and began to howl in harmony with Arya's humming. "They're not here to hunt," Maya realized. "They're here to sing with her. Which makes them even more dangerous," Torres said. "A wolf protecting its pack will attack to defend. But a wolf in the grip of a prime communicator's influence will follow that communicator anywhere, even to its own death." As they watched, more animals emerged from the forest. Bears, mountain lions, deer, elk, even smaller creatures like foxes and raccoons. All of them arranged themselves around the cottage in a vast circle, all of them adding their voices to the strange symphony. And in the center of it all, 8-month-old Arya continued to glow and hum, her consciousness lost somewhere in the collective awareness of hundreds of wild creatures. Maya grabbed her bag and followed Torres toward the back door. "How are we going to get through all of them?" "Very carefully," Torres replied, pulling what looked like a small flare gun from his jacket. "This contains a concentrated scent that should mask your daughter's pheromone signature temporarily. It might give us enough time to reach the cars." He fired the device out the back door, and a cloud of thick, sweet-smelling smoke billowed across the yard. The animals immediately became agitated, milling around in confusion as their connection to Arya was temporarily disrupted. "Now," Torres said, and they ran. Maya clutched Arya to her chest as they sprinted through the confused mass of wildlife. A mountain lion swiped at them but missed, more confused than aggressive. A bear reared up on its hind legs but seemed unable to focus on them through the masking scent. They reached Maya's car just as the smoke began to clear. The animals were already reorienting themselves, turning toward Arya with renewed focus. "Follow me," Torres shouted as he jumped into his SUV. "Stay close, and whatever you do, don't stop until we're at least 50 miles from here." Maya strapped Arya into her car seat, noting that the baby's humming had subsided to a barely audible whisper, and the glow was fading from her skin. But her eyes remained that unnaturally wise expression, as if she understood exactly what was happening. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart," Maya whispered, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. "Mama's going to figure this out." As they drove away from the cottage, Maya watched in her rearview mirror as the hundreds of animals poured out of the forest to surround her abandoned home. They stood there for a long time, calling out to the baby who was no longer there, before slowly, reluctantly, dispersing back into the wilderness. But Maya noticed that some of them didn't leave. Some of them began to follow the cars, keeping pace through the forest as they drove down the mountain road. Whatever connection Arya had formed with these creatures, distance wasn't going to break it easily. And as they drove through the gathering dusk toward an uncertain future, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much larger and more dangerous than anyone understood. The drive to the main highway took 45 minutes of winding mountain roads, and Maya spent every minute of it checking her rearview mirror. The shadows between the trees seemed to move with purpose, keeping pace with their vehicles despite the increasingly steep terrain. Arya had fallen into an exhausted sleep, but even unconscious, she made soft sounds that seemed to echo from the forest around them. When they finally reached the interstate, Torres pulled over at a rest stop and walked back to Maya's car. His face was grim as he tapped on her window. "We have a problem," he said when she rolled it down. "I just got word from our monitoring station. The animals aren't giving up. They're following major highways now, which means they're adapting their behavior in ways we've never seen before." Maya felt her stomach drop. What does that mean? It means your daughter's influence is stronger than any prime communicator we've encountered. Usually, the connection breaks down over distance and time, but these animals are traveling hundreds of miles from their natural territories to follow her. They're crossing major roads, entering populated areas, ignoring every survival instinct they have. As if to prove his point, a family of deer bounded across the rest stop parking lot, completely ignoring the few travelers and heading directly toward Maya's car. They stopped about 20 feet away and stood there, watching Arya sleep through the window. "This is insane," Maya whispered. "She's just a baby." "That might be why it's so strong," Torres said thoughtfully. "Adults have barriers, psychological defenses that limit how deeply they can connect. But a child's mind is completely open. She's not just communicating with these animals. She's becoming part of their pack consciousness." Maya's phone rang, startling her. The number on the display was the one Torres had given her for Dr. Winters. She answered hesitantly. "Ms. Chen, this is Dr. Sarah Winters. Agent Torres asked me to call you directly." The voice was warm, maternal, with a slight accent Maya couldn't place. "Dr. Winters, I need to know exactly what you people want with my daughter." "I want to help her control her gift before it kills her," Dr. Winters said bluntly. "Miss Chen, I was a prime communicator myself once. I know what she's going through because I survived it." Maya felt a spark of hope. "You have the same abilities?" "Had. Past tense. The training I received taught me how to maintain boundaries, how to stay human while still accessing the animal consciousness. But the process, it changes you. I want you to understand that before you make any decisions." "What kind of changes?" There was a long pause. "I can still communicate with animals, but not like I could when I was young. The connection is more controlled now, more limited. Some would say I lost part of my gift to save my sanity. Others would say I lost part of my humanity to keep the gift from destroying me." Maya looked at Arya, still sleeping peacefully despite the chaos around them. "And if I don't bring her to you, then in approximately 72 hours, Her consciousness will merge completely with the collective animal awareness in this region. She'll cease to be human in any meaningful sense. Her body will survive, but the child you know as your daughter will be gone forever. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. 72 hours. How can you be so specific? Because I've seen it happen before. The progression is always the same once a prime communicator reaches this level of activation. First comes the attraction phase, where animals begin gathering. Then the synchronization phase, where the child begins matching their biorhythms to the local wildlife. Finally, the integration phase, where the boundaries between human and animal consciousness dissolve completely. Maya felt tears building in her eyes. What phase is Arya in now? Based on what Agent Torres has described, she's entering the final stages of synchronization. The glowing you observed, the harmonic vocalizations, those are signs that her neural pathways are restructuring themselves to accommodate multiple consciousness streams. Can you reverse it? If we begin treatment immediately, yes. But Miss Chen, I won't lie to you, the process is difficult, especially for a child so young. We'll have to temporarily suppress her abilities almost completely, then slowly reintroduce them under controlled conditions. It's traumatic, and there's always a risk of permanent damage. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of an impossible decision. And if the treatment works, she'll be able to live a relatively normal life. She'll still have her abilities, but they'll be manageable. She'll be able to choose when and how to use them instead of being overwhelmed by them. Torres tapped on the window again, pointing toward the highway. Maya could see lights in the distance, not car lights, but the reflective eyes of animals moving along the roadside in organized groups. Dr. Winters, there's something else you should know, Maya said into the phone. This morning, when I helped free a bear cub, the mother bear spoke to me. Not out loud, but in my head. She said Arya was marked by old magic, and that danger was coming to the forest. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Maya thought the call had dropped. Finally, Dr. Winters spoke, her voice carefully controlled. Miss Chen, where exactly did this encounter take place? At my cottage near Pine Ridge. There's an old stone wall where the cub got trapped. Can you describe the wall? Any unusual markings or symbols? Maya thought back to the strange scratches that had appeared in the stone. There were symbols carved into it afterward. I could somehow read them, even though I'd never seen writing like that before. What did they say? Something about a covenant being made and calling me child of two worlds. Why? Is that important? Dr. Winters' voice became urgent. Miss Chen, you need to get to our facility immediately. Don't stop for food, don't stop for gas unless you absolutely have to. What you've described, it changes everything. What do you mean? The wall you found isn't just a property boundary. It's what we call a threshold site, a location where the barriers between human and animal consciousness are naturally thin. They were built by indigenous peoples thousands of years ago as communication points with the animal kingdom. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Communication points? Ms. Chen, your daughter, didn't just accidentally develop prime communicator abilities. She was chosen. The bear cub getting trapped, you finding him at exactly the right moment, Arya being present during the rescue. None of that was coincidence. Chosen by who? By the same intelligence that built those walls, the same consciousness that your bear spoke for when she warned you about coming danger. Torres was knocking on the window more insistently now, pointing toward a group of wolves that had emerged from the tree line and were approaching the rest stop. But these weren't the same wolves from her cottage. These were larger, their eyes reflecting an intelligence that seemed almost human. Dr. Winters, I think we need to go. Now. Yes, get moving. But Miss Chen, there's one more thing you need to know. The danger the bear warned you about, we think we know what it is. Maya started her car, following Torres as he pulled out of the rest stop. The wolves watched them leave but didn't follow. Instead, they sat down and began to howl, a sound that was picked up and repeated by unseen animals throughout the forest. "What kind of danger?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady as she navigated back onto the highway. "For the last 6 months, we've been tracking unusual seismic activity in the Rocky Mountain region. Not earthquakes, something else. The patterns match readings we took at other threshold sites just before they activated." "Activated how?" "Miss Chen, what would you say if I told you that threshold sites aren't just communication points? That they're part of a network designed to awaken something that's been sleeping for thousands of years?" Maya's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I'd say you sound crazy. 6 months ago, I would have agreed with you. But then the first site activated near Glacier National Park. The animals in a 50-mile radius all converged on a single location and began exhibiting coordinated behavior unlike anything in recorded history. When our team investigated, they found an underground chamber filled with symbols identical to the ones you saw today." "What was in the chamber?" "Something that shouldn't exist. Technology that's somehow both incredibly ancient and impossibly advanced. And Miss Chen, it was responding to human thought patterns, specifically to the thought patterns of prime communicators." Arya stirred in her car seat, making soft sounds that seemed to harmonize with the engine's vibration. Maya glanced back and saw that her daughter's eyes were open, but they weren't focused on anything in the car. Instead, they seemed to be tracking movement outside the windows, following things Maya couldn't see. "Doctor." "Winters, Arya's awake, and she's acting strange again." "How strange?" "She's looking at things that aren't there, and she's making sounds that seem to match the car's vibrations. She's tuning into the network. Ms. Chen, how fast are you driving?" "About 70 miles per hour. Why?" "Increase your speed to 85 and maintain that exact velocity. The frequency of your engine at that speed will help mask her biorhythmic signature from the network sensors." Maya pressed the accelerator, feeling the car surge forward. Almost immediately, Arya's strange vocalization stopped, and she looked around the car with more normal baby awareness. "It worked," Maya said in amazement. "But how did you know that would help?" "Because I helped design the countermeasures." "Miss Chen, what I'm about to tell you is classified, but given the circumstances, you need to know. The facility where I work isn't just a research center. It's a containment and monitoring station for threshold site activity." "Containment of what?" "We're not entirely sure. But whatever built the threshold sites, whatever created the network that's awakening now, it's been waiting for the right conditions to emerge. And we believe those conditions include the presence of a prime communicator with your daughter's level of natural ability." Maya felt sick. "You're saying Arya is some kind of key?" "More like a catalyst. The network responds to prime communicator brain patterns, but it needs a specific type of consciousness to fully activate. Most adult prime communicators are too damaged by their experiences, too closed off to provide the pure connection it's looking for. But a baby's mind is completely open, completely trusting. If the network gained access to Arya's consciousness, what would happen?" Dr. Winters was quiet for a long moment. "We're not sure, but based on the ancient texts we've translated from other threshold sites, we believe it would trigger what the original builders called the Great Awakening." "Which means what exactly?" "The complete integration of human and animal consciousness on a global scale. the end of the barrier between species. In essence, the next stage of evolution, whether humanity is ready for it or not. Maya's phone crackled with static, and she realized they were driving through a mountainous area where cell coverage was spotty. "Doctor Winters, are you still there?" The line cleared for a moment. "Ms. Chen, we're losing the connection, but listen carefully. Whatever you do, don't let anyone else near your daughter until you reach our facility. There are other groups who know about the Threshold sites, groups that want to use the network for their own purposes." "What kind of groups?" But the line had gone dead, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts and her mysteriously gifted daughter. She looked at Torres's taillights ahead of her and wondered if she was making the right choice in following him. Everything Dr. Winters had told her sounded like science fiction, but after the morning's events, Maya was beginning to accept that the world was far stranger than she'd ever imagined. As they crested a mountain pass, Maya saw something that made her heart skip. Spread out in the valley below was a small town, but it wasn't the lights of houses and businesses that caught her attention. It was the animals, thousands of them moving through the streets in organized formations. Bears walking down the main street in single file. Deer leaping over cars in perfect synchronization. Birds wheeling overhead in patterns that looked almost like writing against the night sky. And all of them were moving in the same direction, toward the highway Maya and Torres were about to descend onto. Maya grabbed her radio and tried to contact Torres. "Agent Torres, do you see what's happening in that town?" His voice crackled back, tense with concern. "I see it. Miss Chen, we're going to have to find another route. That's not normal animal behavior. Is this because of Aria?" "Partly, but I think there's something else going on. Something bigger than just your daughter's abilities." As they watched, the organized animal formations in the town below suddenly stopped moving. Every creature, from the largest bear to the smallest bird, turned to face the mountain pass where Maya and Torres sat in their cars. And then, in perfect unison, they all began to vocalize. Bears roared, wolves howled, birds called, creating a symphony that rose from the valley like a prayer or a warning. Aria, who had been quiet in her car seat, suddenly sat up straighter and began to respond. Her baby voice joined the chorus, and Maya could swear she saw lights beginning to flicker beneath her daughter's skin again. "We need to go," Maya whispered, but she wasn't sure if she was talking to Torres or to herself. "We need to go right now." But as she put the car in reverse, Maya realized they had another problem. Behind them, filling the mountain pass they'd just driven through, was another organized group of animals. They were surrounded, caught between two gatherings of creatures that seemed to be waiting for something. And in her car seat, 8-month-old Aria continued to glow and sing, her voice somehow perfectly harmonizing with thousands of wild animals as if she was conducting a vast, living orchestra. Maya sat frozen in her car, watching the impossible scene unfold around them. The animals weren't moving closer, but they weren't leaving either. They were waiting. And somehow Maya knew they were waiting for her to make a choice. Torres's voice crackled over the radio. "Ms. Chen, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Whatever happens next, don't get out of your car. Don't break the connection between you and your daughter." "What connection?" Maya whispered. But even as she asked, she felt it. A warm, tingling sensation where her hand rested on Aria's car seat, as if electricity was flowing between them. That's when she understood. The animals weren't just responding to Aria. They were responding to both of them together. Maya wasn't just Aria's mother. She was her anchor, the bridge that kept the baby tethered to her humanity while allowing her to communicate with the wild. The bear's words came back to her, child of two worlds. Not just Aria, but Maya herself. In the valley below, the animals began to move again, but this time their formation was different. They were creating a pattern, a vast spiral with an empty space at its center, an invitation. They want us to come down, Maya realized. Ms. Chen, don't even think about it. Torres's voice was sharp with alarm. We have backup coming, military units with tranquilizer weapons. But Maya was no longer listening to Torres. She was listening to her daughter, who had stopped glowing and was now looking directly at her with those impossibly wise eyes. Mama, Arya said clearly, her second real word, home. Maya felt tears streaming down her face. She understood now. This wasn't about danger or government facilities or ancient networks. This was about belonging, about finding the place where Arya could be who she was meant to be, without losing herself in the process. Maya made her choice. She started the car and drove slowly down the mountain road toward the waiting animals. Behind her, she could hear Torres shouting into his radio, but she didn't stop. As they reached the edge of the town, the animals parted like a living sea, creating a clear path to the center of their spiral. Maya drove slowly, marveling at the complete trust these wild creatures showed. Bears that could crush her car with a single swipe walked calmly alongside her windows. Mountain lions padded past like oversized house cats. At the center of the spiral, Maya stopped the car and got out, lifting Arya into her arms. The baby was perfectly calm now, no longer glowing, no longer making strange sounds. She was just a normal 8-month-old, except for those eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the forest itself. The animals formed a vast circle around them, but they kept their distance. Respectful, patient. Maya realized they weren't there to take Arya away from humanity. They were there to welcome her into something larger. A familiar figure emerged from the crowd of animals. The mother bear from that morning, walking slowly and deliberately toward them. Behind her walked the little cub, completely healed and playful again. The mother bear stopped a few feet away and sat down. When she spoke, her voice in Maya's mind was warm and full of gratitude. You chose love over fear. You chose trust over control. This is why you were chosen to be her mother. What happens now? Maya asked, surprised she could communicate back just by thinking. Now she learns. Not in a laboratory or a facility, but here, in the place where the barriers between worlds are thin. She will grow up knowing both worlds, belonging to both, but lost to neither. Maya looked around at the thousands of animals surrounding them. And you'll protect her? We will teach her, as you will teach her. She will learn to be human from you and learn to be part of the greater family from us. When she is ready, she will help heal the wound between the worlds. What wound? The bear's mental voice became sad. Humans forgot they were part of the web of life. They built walls between themselves and the natural world. But children like yours can bridge that gap. They can remember what was forgotten. Maya felt a presence behind her and turned to see Torres approaching slowly, his hands raised to show he meant no harm. To her surprise, the animals didn't react aggressively to him. Ms. Chen, he said quietly, I've been ordered to take your daughter into custody. Maya straightened, holding Arya protectively. No. The network, the threshold sites. If she activates them, then she activates them, Maya said firmly. Maybe it's time for the world to change. Maybe it's time for humans to remember they're not separate from nature. Torres looked around at the peaceful gathering of predators, his expression conflicted. My orders are clear. That's when something unexpected happened. Arya reached out toward Torres with her small hand, babbling softly. The agent looked into the baby's eyes and his expression began to change. She's not dangerous, is she? He said wonderingly. She's trying to heal something. The mother bear stood up and walked over to Torres. The agent tensed, but the massive creature simply touched his hand with her nose. Torres gasped, his eyes widening as he experienced the same mental connection Maya had felt. "I can hear her," he whispered. She's saying that humans are welcome too, that the awakening isn't about replacing humanity, it's about completing it. Maya smiled, understanding flooding through her. The old magic the bear spoke about. It was never about animals versus humans. It was about remembering that we're all part of the same family. Torres pulled out his radio and spoke into it. "Command, this is Agent Torres. The situation has been resolved peacefully. No intervention required. Repeat, no intervention required." As the night deepened, the animals began to disperse, but not in the panicked scatter Maya might have expected. They left in small groups, families returning to their territories but somehow still connected to something larger. The mother bear approached Maya one last time. "We will watch over you both. When she is old enough, bring her back to the wall where this began. There are others like her being born now, and they will need a teacher." Others? The awakening has begun. Not just here, but in places around the world where the barriers are thin. Your daughter was the first, but she will not be the last. The bear and her cub melted back into the forest, leaving Maya, Arya, and Torres standing in the now empty town square. "What do I tell my superiors?" Torres asked. Maya looked down at Arya, who was fast asleep in her arms, looking like any normal baby. "Tell them you found a little girl who can talk to animals, and that maybe it's time we started listening to what they have to say." Torres nodded slowly. "And the facility? Dr. Winters' program? Maybe Dr. Winters should come here instead. If there are going to be more children like Arya, they shouldn't be hidden away in laboratories. They should be raised in places where both worlds can nurture them." As they walked back to their cars, Maya felt a deep sense of peace she hadn't experienced since her husband's death. She was no longer a widow raising a child alone in isolation. She was part of something vast and ancient and hopeful. Arya stirred in her arms and looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the clear mountain sky. The baby reached up with one small hand as if trying to touch the lights above. "Star," she said clearly, her third word. Maya laughed, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Yes, sweetheart, stars, and bears, and wolves, and maybe someday a world where all of us can talk to each other." As they drove home through the quiet mountain night, Maya noticed something wonderful. The forest around them was alive with sound, but not the chaotic noise of wild animals. It was music, a gentle symphony of creatures singing together in harmony. And somewhere in that vast chorus, Maya could swear she heard the voice of the little bear cub they had saved that morning, calling out a joyful thank you that echoed through the trees and straight into her heart. The awakening had begun, not with violence or fear, but with a simple act of kindness between a mother and a trapped baby bear. And as Maya drove home with her extraordinary daughter sleeping peacefully in the back seat, she knew that tomorrow would bring new wonders, new connections, and new hope for a world where the walls between species had finally begun to come down. In the distance, the ancient stone wall where it all began glowed softly in the moonlight, its symbols pulsing with gentle light, as if keeping time with the heartbeat of the forest itself. The covenant had indeed been made, and the child of two worlds was home at last.